So that's all with the announcement. We can start with the panel. The first presenter is Carla. Please come over. Yeah. The first presenter is Carla Antonini. Carla Antonini from Argentina, but she works at the University of Trento. And her presentation is about co-accountability, a post-normal accountability framework for stakeholder engagement towards sustainability. The floor is yours, Carla.
So, hello everybody. Thank you for listening to this presentation. As he already said, I'm Carla. I'm coming from Trento. And I'm going to present a work that we are doing now from Trento, but with other universities and NGOs, and it's a pretty big project. So this is just what I will go over, a little bit of the introduction, why we started, and the literature review we have done so far. What we consider it could be the framework to work, and then the case study, which is the project we are working with. And then some preliminary observations that hopefully we can also discuss together afterwards. So basically, I added here some ideas to introduce where we are coming from. We come from the Department of Economics and Management, and we are trying to make a new accountability framework that takes into account multiple stakeholder perspectives. So accountability is basically an information system that traditionally was one way, one unidirectional, a power holder that has the right to receive information, and the account holder that has the duty to provide information. So to try to change this paradigm, we are going to introduce the ideas of post-normal science in order to change this unidirection to make it bidirectional, or some sort of a loop, or multidirectional, taking into account different stakeholders. So basically, the aim of the whole study is to find a new accountability approach that is aligned with the post-normal science and aims to be more sustainable. Not only in, usually the traditional approach is very economic, very financial, so to add new dimensions and new values into the framework. Basically, where we are coming from is we did a huge research of different multi-stakeholder studies that they study how to identify stakeholders, how to map, how to prioritize, how to engage, and then also more specifically multi-stakeholder accountability approaches, which are approaches of accountability that in different ways consider different perspectives, like dialogic accountability, pluralistic, and integrated accountability, which is a work from my colleagues in Trento. And also accountabilities that take into account multiple dimensions of impact. Not only this traditional financial, but also to take into account social impact, environmental impact. Of course, the impact depends on the stakeholders, because different stakeholders have different impacts that consider more or less important. So this is the suggested frame. We suggest to take into account these 5 variables that basically answer to different questions that we need to answer in order to create a proper framework. So the variable A is power holder. To whom should be the information provided? Who has the right to obtain the information? The variable B is account holder. Who has to provide this information to whom? The accountability for what means what is important to be measured. what this information has to be about. And then D and E. D is a process, basically how to manage the whole process, how to make this ABC happen. And E is somehow a variable to say, if we don't do well, so what happens? Because so far there are many accountability approaches that already are saying that disclose information about many different things. But if organizations perform badly or impact negatively the environment or the society, nothing happens. So they inform they are doing well and they are not doing well, and there is no consequence to this. So this is the sort of the scheme. Is just at this stage, I think we are working on this idea of having a loop, a dynamic loop that starts basically with the variable AB merged. So our suggestion is there's no power holder and account holder, but all of them are power account holders, to try to eliminate this asymmetry and try to make all the stakeholders a little bit more equal, in the sense of all the stakeholders should have the right to access to information, but also they should be responsible somehow for how the organization is going. And then from here, once stakeholders are identified and they are in the same table, let's say, in the same level, to move into what is important for them to be measured. So what are the dimensions or the priorities that the accountability framework should take into account? Are they more interested in the environment or in their health or in society or in... And then from here to decide together how to make a process that is able to make them participate in the whole process, in an ongoing process. And as you see, the idea is that it's an ongoing process that can change. Not that today we decide the framework and who are the stakeholders and what is important, but it can change, it's dynamic. And the variable E is sort of to not forget this consequential thing of disclosing and performing our responsibility. So this variable is let's say, to try to not only be an information system, but also a system that can actually change the direction if things are not going well. So basically, all these ideas I'm sharing with you, we are implementing in a European project that is called Multi-Act, and is in itself a multi-stakeholder project because there are 11 partners from 8 different European countries and coming from very different backgrounds. I'm coming from the academia. We have 4 universities, but also NGOs and some representatives of policymakers. And so it's already the project itself puts on the table very different perspectives, and not only perspectives, but languages. The way each person coming from a different place speaks or understands the ideas. So the goal of the project is to create an accountability framework for health research impact. So far, health research is measured in impact factor. And this, if we think from a social point of view or from a patient point of view, makes very little sense. For a patient, impact factor is a completely strange idea of performance. So we will try to apply the elements of post-normal science to decide together what are the measurements that are relevant for the different stakeholders. And this is just the phases that the project will go through. Now we are in the phase 1, so we are still together deciding the whole theoretical framework and the model. Then the project will apply this to the multiple sclerosis case in the beginning, and then we'll transfer from multiple sclerosis to wider brain diseases research. So it started 6 months ago, and we are thinking that these are the focus that we could be looking at, taking the case study as taking the project as a case study. Sorry. So the asymmetry of power between different stakeholders. I think yesterday there were a lot of very interesting presentations about this. How not only power but also different capabilities of negotiation. Also the need of building a common language between stakeholders, between sitting together. The role of co-production in accountability and bioethics in health research. These are sort of suggested lines that we will be looking at through the project at the same time that we participate actively in the project. So thank you very much for your attention. And can I say one last?
You still have, yeah, absolutely. You still have time.
Okay, thank you. We will have an event. I asked Pantovic to, I feel bad about this last, this is publicity, but we wanted to invite you all to attend this in person or virtually in March. Pantovic has honored us accepting to visit Trento. So we basically will discuss the relationships between post-normal science and the health sector and how to move forward more into detail into the application of post-normal science for the accountability framework. So invited you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Yeah. The fact of having an agenda came particularly convenient in this case. Okay, so thanks, Carla, for your presentation. And I would like to ask the second speaker, Alessandra Pugnetti from the Institute of Marine Science of the National Research Council, the Italian National Research Council, also known as CNR. And she will read a presentation whose title is Cammini LTER, Welcome to Italian Landscape and Fostering Reflexive and Inclusive Attitude of Scientists. The floor is yours, Alessandra.
So I start saying that I am a total outsider of this community, and this is my first time here in this symposium, but this is true also for two of the other authors, Caterina and Amelia, while Alba, that you can see there, is a supporter at least of this community, and she is the reason why I am here, and you have me here to speak to you. And she pulled and pushed me a lot to come here, and actually I am happy because in these 2 days I have learned a lot of things, understood half of the messages, but this happens to me also when I go to normal congresses. And so I will start with this experience, Cammini LTER, and another thing that I am aware after these 2 days here is about the you say naivety of this speech in respect to all the others, because I'm an aquatic scientist and I present something that happened in a community of field ecologists, so with a total different expertise, let's say. Well, I have understood and we have heard in these days that post-normal science actually inspires a new scientific practice that is reflexive, inclusive also of other perspectives. And this is very nice, but also extremely challenging for most of us scientists that are working under constraint or publish or perish, or I may add of looking for funding. And informal science communication initiatives, we think that can be a setting, stimulating a cultural shift, at least contributing to this new way of reframing our own research practices and of reconsidering the relation with the society. So I will speak about an informal science and communication initiative that was carried out within this context, the context of the long-term ecological research networks. Long-term ecological research, very shortly, is a branch, let's say, of ecology that considers the time scale of typically of decades, let's say the time span of our lives or of our grandfather or nephews, and it tries to understand, analyze, and monitor changes in the ecosystems, patterns, and in biodiversity in this time span. LTR is an important branch of ecology, and since many years, at least 3 decades, starting from the first networks that was established in USA at the end of the 80s, is organized in networks of sites and platforms. These networks are organized at the national, European, and global level. So you have national networks, European, you have an LTR European network, and the international one. And these networks are made by scientists, by ecologists, by field ecologists, actually. And since more than a decade, in the LTR network, there has been an integration of social science, and in different platforms, not in all the sites, but at least in some specific platforms, they are trying to involve also the broader stakeholder community since the beginning, also to define research questions and priority. For this reason, these LTR networks are also the context to a suitable context where new and different forms of communication can take place. This initiative that I'm going to speak about is called Cammini LTER. Cammini means trail, as you know. And these cammini were conceived and realized by scientists belonging to LTR Italy, so LTR network of my country. They were conceived and carried out since 2015. The initial motivation was to making people, citizens, aware of what ecology and LTR activities are. So what we are doing, nobody knows what we are doing, so we will try to go outside our laboratories and speak to the people. They are a series of trails that connect LTR sites, though the peculiarity is that they connect the different sites of this network. They are performed by walk or by bike, and researchers engage citizens walking and cycling with them. They were imagined as a sort of via francigena, you know, that is the ancient pilgrim way that goes from Canterbury to Rome, if I'm not wrong, of ecological research, where we, LTR Italy scientists, acted as ancient storytellers on the road, sharing our experimental work and our ecological studies with people along these itineraries that connected some, at least, LTR sites. LTR Italy network is made of almost 80 research sites. It has a clear transdisciplinary approach. We have terrestrial sites going from high altitude meadows to forest or dunes, and then we have freshwater inland waters, marine sites, and transitional water sites. Tens of institutions are involved, and let's say, I think, hundreds of scientists, all working in the field of ecology and biodiversity. We realized 11 cammini in these last years, 7 by walk, 3 by bike, 1 by kayak. They lasted from 3 to 10 days and were carried out across all Italy. The Cammini North and Central and Southern Italy, with 16 research sites involved. And many research institutions. This is important because we have both academy, let's say universities, so academic scientists, many researchers from the National Research Council, but also scientists that are more involved in the direct, let's say, management of and control of the territories, like the former National Forest Service that now has changed, as some of you know, in Carabinieri biodiversity. And we considered many different research issues, very different among them, aquatic ecology and plankton. We could speak about ecology and plankton also on the high altitude lakes, high altitude biodiversity and climate change, forest ecosystem and ecosystem services, and so on. What we have been doing in these trails, first of all, we have been walking and cycling side by side with citizens. Then we had many meetings with them, with students, a lot of thematic events with the local associations. Then we started some citizen-side activities. We carried out bioblitzes. We made this nice experience of seafood train tours that are these laboratories made with students for imagining the future of the sea at two coastal cities with a heavy industrial impact in southern Italy. And bioblitz are 24-day blitz, let's say, a Pacific blitz, during which in 24 days the researchers together with the citizens, 40 hours, sorry, days, it is not a blitz, it's a long history, sorry. They make that taxonomic determination of all the kind of species that they can find. So they are experts of different taxonomic groups. And they go on, as you see from this picture, from during day but also during night for all the species that are typically not diurnal. And then we also made this not conventional, let's say, use of social networks, producing this soup post that we that are short videos that we made during the Cammini, commenting on what was going on, and the name Suppost was, of course, it reminds the post, but also the supposition that we do about what we were doing with a lot of uncertainties. And what we do not in this presentation, I will not speak about the reaction of the public, but actually what happened to the scientists during this experience. Actually, the drive of the researchers out of their comfort zone, I mean the laboratories or the conference like this one, challenged the usual thought patterns and offered the possibility to overcome an exclusively rational and cognitive approach. It was at least a possibility. And in particular, it was the informal context in which we acted, in which we met people, the intimacy that walking together, struggling to reach the top of a mountain or cycling created among researchers and with people that affected the way scientists perceive the relation with the public and their communication priorities. So I will present here some of the reflections that were born in these critical considerations and discussion about many aspects of science communication framed in the more general context of research production. We use different materials. We started from the material that the brochure of the trails, so the ideas that was to communicate what we were doing and so on. All the materials that we produced during the trails, blogs, daily reports, and then video, audio and interviews, video and audio records of spontaneous conversation with the researchers during the Cammini. And of course, we took part of the initiative both as participant and as observer. And we could highlight mainly a perception of different kind of hierarchies and separations that we organized along the three main subjects: separation between science and society, between different kinds of knowledge, and between cognitive and emotional approaches. Science and society. In the next three slides, and then I'm going to the conclusions. In italics and in blue are some sentences, some reflections that we catched from the researchers themselves, interviews or spontaneous conversation or from their blogs. The first one is about the famous metaphor of ivory tower. Leaving the laboratories to go in the street, of course, was the first feeling, perception that researchers have. They leave out the ivory tower to go let's say, to meet people on the street, leaving the ivory tower and going in the street. And it was not only the movement, but also we had to abandon, of course, a language, not only the hyper-specialized language, but we realized also how much of our jargon we are not aware of anymore. So this produced a kind of destructuring of our usual mindset because we realized that we had to move from jargon to metaphor, and also we realized that we have a lot of metaphor that we are not we are not aware anymore. So this created really this dismantling, let's say, of our usual mindset. And but this simplification soon appeared not enough because we had, of course, to change also the structure of our mind. And the communication is not anyway only a matter of getting the right message, so we can be more or less skilled to do this, but also of confronting with other views of the world and belief systems. And there are many tacit hierarchies between these different kinds of knowledge. And of course, walking and cycling together make it more easier to see these barriers and to overcome them because you are not in a conference, but you are walking or cycling together, and it is easier to speak and to see, at least, I don't know if we overcome them, but at least to be aware that these barriers are present and it is essential to overcome them to communicate. Another aspect during this process in which we realize what is necessary to communicate, it is a two-way process and so on, not easy for us, we also realized that there is a fracture between us that were working and doing this initiative and most of the scientific community that was at home producing excellent research according to the publish or perish constraint, let's say. And they considered us a little bit crazy because we were not producing excellent research. We had with us many researchers with a temporary position that were among the main organizers of this initiative. But anyway, they believed a lot in this kind of initiative, and actually we felt during Cammini that this publish or perish is a kind of hoax, and I mean that it is our activities are a little bit meaningful if we not include in them an active and personal involvement with the public. And then the different kind of knowledge, of course. We are ecologists, we are working on environmental issues that are characterized, of course, by social complexity. And this require a dynamic science communication process in which we have to listen to and integrate a different kind of knowledge. From different actors that have different background, and we can share this view only if we embrace also the other views. And this is not easy, but it was something that we pragmatically experienced during this initiative. And realizing that members of the general public can already hold a rich mental concept about ecosystem and biodiversity, even if they do not have the language to express it. So it was really interesting to see that we are not bringing science, but we are exchanging something with them. And finally, the emotional approach. We discovered or rediscovered, or we were already aware of, I don't know, the strength of emotion and of passion in two different ways. One is that speaking informally with people about our work, in many of us were moved back to initial motivation of our work. So in a sense, we rediscovered the passion that initially moved us. And the importance also that emotion have in our daily routine, even if we are not aware of them. And also that the ecological thought has an important cognitive part, but also an affective one that has to do with emotion, beauty, fascination, intimacy. So I don't want to be too naive, but it's not enough, the knowledge of nature. We also have to love it and to feel emotion when we deal with nature. And the problems come later, so we had to move the focus from the problems that has to be solved to recreating an intimacy with nature. And so this was an important aspect for us, at least. I hope also for the people that came with us. Final considerations, this reflection during Cammini convinced us that it is crucial that researchers engage with the public at first hand, even if we are not so good in communication, because this allows to reflect not only on our own communication practices, but also on the modern science model of production itself. And it became evident, I repeat, in a pragmatic way and spontaneously, let's say, that communication is the result of a co-construction among actors, and where all the participants bring their imaginary of ecology and society. And finally, engagement with the public, if not only scientific contact, but also values, identities, emotion, trust, and responsibilities became involved, can result in deeper awareness of the role that each actor in the management and care of the territory. And finally, all these considerations, written in a much better way than what I presented, in the way that you presented, are in this paper that is freely available on this journal, that is Visions for Sustainability, that is officially in press and will be, it's already available. And then we also produced in Italian a monography on this experience that will be soon available with open access, of course. And finally, if you wish to have other information about LTER Italy or about Cammini, these are some indications for you, and that's all.
Thank you, Alessandra. Now, our the third last speaker of this panel, it's Briana Bombana from the Department of Geography of the Autonomous University of Barcelona, Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. And she will present, a presentation is about a double loop process for beach quality indexes, addressing the complexity of Catalan coast. So please, Briana.
So, hi everyone, thank you. My name is Briana Bombana, and I'm here to present a bit of my PhD thesis that I am developing at the Autonomous University of Barcelona together with my supervisor, Eduard Ariza. The main message we want to stress here in these next minutes is that the post-normal science approach has been helping us on developing better beach assessment tools, both in terms of epistemological idea of knowledge assessment, but also in a pragmatic way. So I will first briefly introduce you to some of the coastal complexities. Well, coastal zones are an interface between sea, land, and the atmosphere, so it produces a lot of different ecological processes and also the most rich environments on Earth, like for example coastal reefs, and at the same time we have like half of the population living in this very narrow strip of sand, which produces a lot of conflicts. With beaches, this is not different, especially here in Catalonia, where we have very high demands for coastal services and also resources in order to produce like tourism activities. So in the last 30 to 40 years, more or less, beach management tools have been have been presented inside the academic view of different universities all over the world. So here in the right corner of the slide, we can find a list of some of these tools, the newest ones, like in the last decade. They tried to, they are basically a set of indicators that aim at measuring beach quality. So they were like formulated inside these academic, together with academic experts and sometimes with the help of some beach users, their perceptions and views. However, so far, these tools have never passed through a process of knowledge quality assessment. So one of the aims and goals of my thesis is to assess and improve indicators of beach systems in terms of knowledge available in the science policy interface. So I will just present some of the results that we have so far and also the approach that we are working on. All of these sets of indicators have followed a traditional path that we called here the single loop process, because it consists on 4 steps. The first one is the selection and definition of sub-indexes or indicators, followed by production and assessment of these indicators, and in the last step would be the information for policy actions. And what these indicators usually followed is also this single loop approach, which the feedback was mainly done and received from academic experts. So what we noticed is that maybe a double loop process would have to be added to this framework. This double loop process would happen to be, since from the first beginning, the first step of this chain, and it would involve a more expanded peer assessment. That is to say, we should actually start to integrate a more wide idea of actors when we are constructing these kind of scientific tools. So, and also, once one of these double loop processes is followed, we should continue developing these in order to introduce and add some of the changes that are really usual in these complex systems. So what we took the Beach Quality Index, which is a framework developed here in Catalonia in 2010. It actually consisted of 3 sets of indicators. Each one of these sets of indicators corresponded to one of the beach functions that they asserted that they should look at. It's the recreational, natural, and protection function of beaches. So, for example, for each one of these functions, we would expand 2 different attributes. For example, the protection function, the aim of this indicator in itself was to actually estimate the potential of beaches on protecting coastal infrastructure from the sea energy. So it divided itself in 3 other attributes, which are the effective beach width, the minimal beach width, and the storm surge. This framework in 2010 was developed by 3 universities here in Catalonia: the Polytechnic University of Catalonia, the Universitat de Girona, and also the Center of Environmental Studies in Blanes. So it was like an idea of a multidisciplinary work. So what we wanted was to see if this BQI was actually incorporating more stakeholders would actually incorporate a lot of views during the kind of assessment they were trying to respond. So the first thing that we did by taking this framework as the center of our analysis was to organized a multi-stakeholder meeting, and in which 57 participants attended. They were from different fields for the 3 levels of administration here, also from some universities, from the organized civil society, and from the private sector. What we identified is that what we wanted with this meeting was to have like a whole panorama of the Catalan beaches. So what we identified is that they used 4 main narratives in order to explain these systems. These narratives were the economic growth, most linked with tourism activities, the environmental protection, that see beaches as natural environment, most of all, and sustainable development that tried to mix both of these views, and also the integrated coastal zone management, which were those actors that wanted to actually have more integration between them in order to found and solve problems that are usual to these coastal zones. And to explain that, they saw also, we identified that they divided the Catalan beaches in 5 dimensions: the beach economics, morphodynamics, the ecology, natural heritage, the recreation activity, and the governance and management. So, what we did, after this meeting, we saw that beaches in Catalonia had these 5 dimensions, so we organized one focus group for each one of these dimensions in order to talk about, actually discuss about the indicators that we previously have from the BQI and see if they were complying with their views. So first, we presented, broke down, and discussed these indicators. After in order to support this discussion, we used the news app matrix that's based in 6 criteria regarding knowledge assessment. And here what we did was to value some of the assumptions that we agreed that were like embedded in these beach quality indexes. And then we could finally identify some of the weakest points of what we now call the single-looped BQI, which is this BQI that they presented on 2010. In order to tackle and present another version of this BQI, including an expanded peer idea of what Catalan beaches are. So just to give you an example of these assumptions, in that example of the protection function, the former indicator used to use a mathematical model called S-beach model that was not even calibrated to the Catalan coast. So by talking with the stakeholders, they said, why are you using this? Well, maybe we should just look at some newspapers in the last 10 years and identify which were the beaches that were not complying with the protection function, since they had like harmful events in the last 10 years. By harmful events here, we would say maybe a sea storm that would impact a sea promenade. No, so this was one example of a different, like an update of one of these indicators by integrating these stakeholders. So by crossing also this single-looped BQI, the one from 2010, we saw that these white dots are, which one of these white dots represents one of the indicators that we had before. And if we look at it, they were almost focused on only one of the narratives, the economic growth narrative, which is this sphere here in the right corner of the slide. And when we looked at it at the first time, we thought, wow, how can this be happening? Because actually scientists are claiming that beach management is applying integrated coastal zone management, but here we are just talking about one of the narratives, which is really linked with the tourism activities. So for the second BQI, which is this one, the double-looped one, what we see is that first, instead of treating beaches as beach functions, we started to distribute the different indicators by the dimensions that we recognized before. And also these indicators were placed, and by their actualization, we could place them in another parts of these spheres, that which one of them represent our narratives. It's true that we are still really constrained to this idea of beaches as tourism, a tourism product, but we now could at least include the sustainable development better, and also the environmental protection, and especially the here the integrated coastal zone management. We have not been trying to find indicators to respond to these in the beach management field, but actually the whole process that we are trying to develop actually respond to it directly. So it will not be seen in the indicators, but actually in the process. So some of the final considerations is that the expanded peer assessment in the beach management field has helped to develop the double-looped BQI better. The previous focus on recreational activity and the economic growth narrative was counterbalanced by the inclusion and development of the other four narratives. We can assert that this new double-looped BQI is more pertinent, useful, and transparent. And also the idea of having a double loop in future developments kind of assumes that we will embrace better the changes that are very usual in these environments. The identified rooms for improvement and the consequently practical improvements are reinforcing the potential of the post-normal science and supporting more quality assessments. And nonetheless, all of the steps that we follow so far are the first two steps of the single loop process. So we will still have to develop the last two, which are the practical application of the indicators here in Catalonia with society, and also to report the results together with society, which is what we will try to develop and carry out in this next year. So basically is that. I will be happy to answer your questions, and thank you.
Thank you.